morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Centennial celebration of the American Legion. Our post here has been here since 1932, and we're happy to be part of this Centennial celebration. 100 years ago, the American Legion was formed right after World War I in Paris, France. In fact, Paris has post number 1 that was established in 1919. We got a 30-second video we want to queue up for you.
We believe in patriotism. We believe in our nation's youth. We believe veterans earn their benefits through their service to our nation. We believe in a strong national security. We believe in our country. For 100 years, veterans have been impacting our nation through the American Legion, and we believe it makes a difference. If you believe, learn more at legion.org/webelieve.
Thank you. I'm going to ask everyone to please stand. We're going to present the colors, and then we're going to have the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glared, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Retire the colors. Please remain standing. Kat is also going to be singing the French national anthem because France is sponsoring Tom in his jump into Normandy again this year, so we want to honor France.
Allons enfants de la patrie, le jour de gloire est arrivé. Contre nous de la tyrannie, l'étendard sanglant élevé, l'étendard sanglant élevé. Entendez-vous dans les campagnes mugir ces féroces soldats? Ils viennent jusque dans nos pas, égorger nos fils et nos compagnes. Aux armes, citoyens, formez vos bataillons. Marchons, marchons, qu'un sang impur abreuve nos sillons.
Please be seated. Please be seated. Thank you. We'll continue on with our program here. This is a very special page since 1932, and in fact, where is Don Briggs? Please stand, Don. Don is the son of one of the original commanders here, and Don served also as a commander here. We've been here since 1932. Thank you, Don. Well, correction. His dad built this in 1930. Thank you. I want to go through just real fast before we get into our speakers, the American Legion's mission statement and what we're all about. The American Legion was chartered and incorporated by Congress in 1919 as a patriotic veterans organization devoted to mutual helpfulness. It is the nation's largest wartime veterans service organization committed to mentoring youth and sponsorship of wholesome programs in our community, advocating patriotism and honor, promoting strong national security, and continued devotion to fellow service veterans and their families. We're built on 4 pillars. The first being Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation. We believe access to veterans care is a must. Better funding formula for veterans care. The support for veterans with special needs. Career opportunities. The GI Bill for a new century. Employment and business. Heroes to hometowns. Volunteering, and final respects. On national security, we believe in a strong national defense, military quality of life, homeland security, foreign relations, the full accounting of our POWs and MIA, and Operation Comfort Warriors. In the area of Americanism, flag protection. So if you have flags that are no longer serviceable, please bring them here to the Legion and we will dispose of them in proper manner. Illegal immigration, voters registration and participation, Boy Scouts, our post supports a Cub Scout troop here. The Pledge of Allegiance, Establishment Clause lawsuits. For youth in service is fighting against child pornography, catastrophic illness, intellectual disabilities, immunization, family integrity, and media violence. Those are the pillars that we're built on, and that's what we're all about. I want to thank the City of Encinitas, and I'd like to invite up Deputy Mayor Jody Hubbard.
I wasn't sure, but I think I can still say good morning, everyone. I want to thank you, Commander Schillingberg, for inviting me to come today and to join in this momentous celebration of Post 416 and the entire American Legion organization. There we go, much better. Commemorating the American Legion's 100 years of support for our veterans, servicemen and women, is a great honor for me. And it's a great honor for me because I don't come from a military family. It wasn't until my father was almost 50 years old, and today he would have been 93 if he was still here. He was one of the greatest generation, that he shared his story with me as to why he did not fight in World War II. And when he shared that story with me, there were a lot of tears in his eyes. And I realized he carried the burden with him his whole life that he wasn't allowed to fight for his country. So that makes this really special for me to be up here today. I know he'd be smiling down on me. As we reflect on the last 100 years, think of all the men and women who have walked in and out of Post 416 and all of the other American legions around the world. We are forever indebted to those who have served and are currently serving our country in all branches of our nation's military. I think it's important to pause in gratitude for all those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and for those who are not able to join us today. My sincerest thanks to all of you and to your families for the freedom we enjoy because of your bravery and service. The American Legion is a treasured, vibrant institution in our city. This post and the veterans it supports embody the sacred values of each military branch and reminds me of the joy and pride that comes with serving others. Today, the San Diego American Legion supports a local membership of more than 450 service people. And I know that the goal is to continue welcoming more and more members into this devoted community. As one of the larger posts in the country, you should be so proud of the standard you set in caring for and revering our veterans. American Legion Post 416 fosters a vital network of support for veterans living in the North County, San Diego. It's a big responsibility and one that the city of Encinitas completely supports. Not only do we appreciate the heroism of each service member, but we admire the American Legion for how it enriches our city. Commander Schillingberg recently informed me that the American Legion is the second oldest business in Encinitas, which is a notable accomplishment by itself. But when you consider a broad range of its services and large membership, the tenure of Post 416 in Encinitas is nothing short of impressive. I understand Post 416 is planning to remodel and modernize, otherwise known as Operation Phoenix. This project will ensure that our veterans have access to even more services and can enjoy an enhanced place to call home away from home. Once completed, I expect the new facility to encourage a deeper connection between the Legion, its membership, and continuing inspiring patriotism in all of us. Operation Phoenix will support San Diego's growing membership. Can I ask all of you in the audience who are veterans or currently serving to raise your hands? On behalf of the city of Encinitas and myself, I thank you for your service. And those of you who served in Vietnam, will you please raise your hands again? I personally want to welcome you home. On behalf of the city of Encinitas, I would like to present Post 416 with the Mayor's Certificate of Recognition. Congratulations on this historic anniversary and a sincerest appreciation for all you do for our country and our city.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce from County Supervisors Christine Gaspar's office, Corrine Busta. Welcome, Corrine.
for having me. I'm so honored to be here on behalf of Supervisor Kristen Gaspar. I feel like I'm in the tent of greatness. Thank you for who has served, who is serving, who is supporting people who have served or are serving, and all of the family members. Wow, your service and dedication to our country and to our freedom makes me speechless, and that is very hard to come by, for sure. So, on behalf of the county, I want to present Matt and the American Legion Post 416 a certificate of recognition. And it's not just recognizing your service and what you provide to the city of Encinitas, but also to the county of San Diego. And honestly, if I went to other counties, you probably have touched people around the world. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for everything that you all do. And I appreciate you having me here. Thank you.
The city of Encinitas, the county, you guys have been so helpful in, with the Legion and so supportive with our veterans here. And again, we're 100 years old, but we're about to go into the next century, continuing our support for veterans. 100 years young, yes. So right now I'd like to introduce 76th California Assembly member, Tasha Boner Horvath, and representing her is Carol Waldman.
Thank you, Matt and everybody. I too am honored to be here on behalf of Assembly Member Tasha Boner Horvath. Personally, this is my first time at the American Legion and have learned a great deal about it since I started working for the Assembly member. And I'm honored to be here. On behalf of the California State Legislature, we would like to present you a certificate to the San Diego American Legion, Post 416, on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of American Legion. I want to recognize Post 416 for the exceptional services to veterans and the families throughout the Encinitas community. We wish you continued success in serving the veterans and their families in the 77th Assembly District.
Thank you so much. One of the issues that we are a champion for is the issue, veterans issue of PTSD and veteran suicide. Today, more than 20 veterans commit suicide a day. It's a tragedy. But what we've discovered is we've discovered Dr. Kevin Murphy. And Dr. Kevin Murphy has a treatment that helps prevent suicide, helps with PTSD, and through the district we've supported that. Now before we talk with Kevin Murphy, we're going to have American Legion District Commander for District 22, Chris Yates, come and say a few words before we get into Dr. Murphy.
Hoorah! Thank you all for being here. Despite the weather, which is actually kind of beautiful, right? It's kind of welcoming for a little bit. But thank you all. A couple introductions. One is from the Department of California, our department adjutant, which is basically our COO for the nearly 90,000 veterans that we have that belong to the American Legion in the Department of California. Paul Brown and his wife Sue are here. Thank you for coming all the way down. Now the other good part, he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but one of our newest members in the American Legion, not even a week old yet, is a United States Marine, and it's Paul's nephew. His name is Jake Peterson. Jake, would you stand up, please? Thank you for your service. Good luck. Hoorah. So you notice there's a van back here, United Through Reading. United Through Reading is one of the American Legions. We've teamed with them and is part of our children and youth programs and also part of our Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation. It's also part of supporting a strong national defense. United Through Reading has veterans, active duty military that are separated from their grandkids or separated from their kids to go into what we used to call a bookmobile, but they've got children's books in there, nice comfortable chair, TV, recording equipment, and you can go in there, sit down and get a recording of you reading a book to your loved one, and then they send it to your loved one so that your child or your grandchild can read a book with you from a distance. So we're very happy to have Kurt. Kurt is manning that. So if somebody has a grandchild or a kid that's far away, please go back and see Kurt. You just sign up, you go in, you pick a book, do your reading, they'll record it, and they'll send it to your daughter or son so they can read it to your grandchildren or to those of you that have children far away. Please go see Kurt. Honor Flight, thank you so much for being here. God bless. Let's hear it for Honor Flight. Thank you. Another great organization that we're proud to be associated with. The CEO is one of our past district commanders. His name is Tony Stewart. He's with the Us for Warriors Foundation. And he's also with the Veterans Council representing 1st District here in San Diego County. So Tony Stewart, hoorah, thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Okay, so we're not going to give a speech. We're just going to show you what we did. It's not so much, well, it is as much about what the American Legion's done for 100 years next week, but it's what we continue to do. And I think you're going to see here very quickly, there's a lot of activities that we do in San Diego County, which we're going to share with you on video. But before we do that, we'd like to ask the guys from King on Poor, Attorney King's office, please come up here. And if we could have Sarah come up here, please. So as they're coming up to the stage, Matthew talked about PRTMS, personalized, repetitive, transcranial magnetic stimulation therapy. Don't try to repeat it. It's taken me 6 months to figure out how to say that. TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation therapy, has been around for decades, 3 decades. And it's basically a one-size-fits-all. But the idea that Dr. Murphy's done is he's personalized that. So anybody that has neurological illness or brain, TBI, PTSD, depression, whatever that is, the concept is to go to the organ, go to the brain, find out where the brain is not in sync. And they focus these magnetic stimulation right on that area. And then they reevaluate it, and then they adjust it based on the progress of the treatment. Now we thought, that's BS, right? So we had a couple gentlemen from District 22 who did struggle with PTSD, and we sent them in to get treatment. They went in to get treatment, and about, 2 months later, the guys came back to give us a report, and it was very emotional because they said it's true. I can sleep. Now that's the number one thing. Sarah, if you could come up here, please. Just we're able to get our sleep back. All right. So a lot of these guys reported to us that they might go to sleep, but they would have to drink a lot of booze, take a lot of drugs, do something unhealthy to just get them a little bit of relaxation. And then sometimes that relaxation wasn't consistent. Is that correct? So people waking up and not getting a good night's sleep. So the first thing it did within days was it allowed these veterans that have a neurological injury to get their sleep. And when you've got good sleep, you're able to get back all your faculties and start dealing with things without the effects of drugs. So Sarah is the executive director for Peak MD, And she works very hard at making sure that, number one, and we're working with Peak MD. We've got 3 missions. Number one, connect veterans in need with neurological illnesses to Dr. Murphy to get the treatment they need. Number 2, for upcoming clinical trials, we want to connect veterans to those clinical trials. And number 3, we want to use our legislative power at national to go after, we're working on who, but one is the DOD. If a person serves in the military, their brain should be measured, and there better be a treatment plan for any neurological illness before they leave. And if it's not before they leave, there better be one as they leave. So that's number 1. I'm only on number 1. Number 2, we're going to go after not go after, because everybody's doing what they can, right? But we just think we need to put some pressure on, and we'd like to go and encourage the VA to replace the current TMS, which they have and don't use, to go with something that is more available to veterans in all our communities, not just San Diego County. And number 3, there's got to be something done about these insurance companies. There are insurance companies that will pay for this treatment if you fail 2 or 3 drug treatments first. That's absolutely ludicrous, right? So we want to make sure as a legislative body, as a group of Legionnaires and family members, that we are doing our due diligence, just like our forefathers did 100 years ago, to go out and make sure that our veterans at every level, at every place, are being taken care of adequately. So with Sarah, the executive director, this stuff is expensive, right? But we make sure that we get veterans treated. So we were able a couple months ago to raise $10,000. We made that presentation. Annette, can you come up here, please? Our finance officer. Right up this way, Annette. So today, Annette's going to make another presentation to Peak MD. These gentlemen right here are with King Poor personal attorney, injury attorney, excuse me. And they also contributed to make this presentation work today, and they're continuing to team with us to make sure that we're taking care of veterans in San Diego County. So to you gentlemen, God bless you. Thank you so much for all you do. Both veterans, by the way, both veterans.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you. On behalf of the American Legion District 22, we would like to present a check for $5,000 to the, that Pete thing. Yes. But anyway, it's from us to you. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. I am so honored and happy to be here today on behalf of Dr. Murphy, who is very sorry that he's not able to be here today. Dr. Murphy has never been able to say no to veterans. He is a veteran himself, having served as an officer in the U.S. Navy, and he is very passionate about taking care of veterans. As Chris mentioned, my name is Sarah Bamer, and I am so proud and honored to be helping to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the American Legion. We simply could not do our life-saving work without the compassion of people like you. So as an executive director of the Peak MD Institute, whose job it is to generate funding to cover the cost of providing PRTMS to veterans and other patients who may not have the means, thank you very much. I say this on behalf of Dr. Murphy, on behalf of Peak MD Institute, but mostly on behalf of the veterans we all serve. I think one of the most heartbreaking stories that I hear repeatedly from the many veterans that I've spoken with is that when they come back after serving bravely, defending our great nation, they come back with sometimes these neurological disorders, PTSD, through no fault of their own. And they try and get care and treatment, and sometimes it works, many times it does, many times it doesn't. These traditional drug therapies may not work. And the most heartbreaking thing that I've heard from these fellows is when they share with me that they're told, well, there's nothing more that we can do. And these guys are going through sleepless nights, night after night, year after year. They're dealing with a lot of other kinds of neurological issues, depression, anxiety, anger issues. So for those that are able to find their way to Dr. Murphy and PRTMS, we are so grateful because it really does restore their lives and their families. So I thank you very much for your support, and I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you.
One story that she didn't tell and Chris didn't tell is we had a veteran here in San Diego. He was at his wit's end. He was about to pull the trigger. He had a gun in his hand. He looked down and someone had given him Dr. Murphy's card and said, "What the hell? I've got nothing to lose." Went to Dr. Murphy, got off his drugs, and restored his relationship with his family. Now that's amazing. Roll the trailer. I got a short video.
My name is Thomas M. Rice. I go by the name Tom. We trained and we trained and we trained. And we trained 24 hours a day. A sniper at about 450 yards from us in a building on the 3rd floor was watching us and looking out the window, and he had a machine gun ready to go and a sniper ready to take place with a telescopic sight and etc. He was well prepared and a way to escape in case he got into any trouble. He took one shot at me and it hit me just above the knee in the left leg. And that started to bleed, and I think we just barely nicked the artery. I told Arthur Texier I was hit, and I told him to give me a shot of morphine. He did, and I now had to try to test the leg and to see if it was broken.
And now, really, let's start off. Where's Royce Williams? Over here. Royce, please stand. Royce was in the first part of the video. forgotten hero. During the Korean War, he shot down how many MiGs? 4 MiGs, and when he got back, they were Russian MiGs. And Russia was not supposed to be in the Korean conflict. He was told by the intelligence officer, this is classified, you can't talk about it. And it went on for years. He couldn't talk about his kills. And when was it, Royce? 53 years he could not talk about it because it was classified. And then they unclassified it. And Royce has gotten the credit for those MiG kills during the Korean War. Our distinguished guest speaker, 101st Airborne Division, jumped into Normandy, France on D-Day, June 6, 1944. He really doesn't need any introduction. Please come up, Tom Rice.
Wow. I finally made it. Still vertical and breathing. I'd like to thank the American Legion and all of my dear friends that have come to pay some honor and prestige to me. It rolled me over in the clover. I'm frozen in intellect and muscle. I feel like I could take off my skin and dance around in my bones. I honor you with the 501st Airborne Regiment, the Geronimo salute. There's nothing worse than a broken zip. Well, you wonder, where did we all come from? From all over the United States. The 101st Airborne Division was tabbed for airborne activity. It was a Wisconsin National Guard unit during World War I. And it was a sister mate of the 82nd Airborne, which was a magnificent group out of World War I. Sergeant York was probably the most famous individual in the division, capturing 200 plus Germans. It's more than a pleasure to be here today. And thank the American Legion and all of my dear friends again for showing up. This is Normandy weather. And we'll survive it, no problem. Well, we came from all over the United States, and we assembled at Camp Toccoa, Georgia, in the northeast section of the state of Georgia, about 20 miles from Atlanta, Georgia. We did 13 weeks of training there, and in phases A, B, C, and D. Phase A was physical education, B was a little bit of parachute maneuvering, and then from there we moved on to Fort Benning, Georgia, and finished C and D. and we continued our physical education. We were so well endowed with muscles all over our bodies that we, for the most part, shamed the drill instructors. And we did things wrong on purpose just to annoy them. When we annoyed them, they'd come over and growl at us and yell and scream at us. It made the hair stand at attention on the back of our necks. And they gave us 25 push-ups. They blew their cork when we said, "Which arm, Sergeant?" 25 more for that remark. Shall I try the other arm, Sergeant? And so it was that way. We did the jump, the jump towers, and from Toccoa, they instituted a 36-foot C-47 nacelle cell, and they strapped a harness on us and gave us instructions as to what we were supposed to do. Put your hands on the outside of the nacelle, stand and lean into the door. Don't look down, you're going to fall 36 feet or thereabouts. If you did look down, you could see an inchworm crawling along like that, and that was a psychological moment that you either gave it up or you continued on. This is where they failed, probably quite a number of them failed. The regimental colonel wanted athletes and college kids, and he got most of all of them except those that went into the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment. So we trained and we trained and we trained, and for an officer to lead untrained individuals into combat is to throw them away. And there were many instances, not of the airborne, but of other groups that occurred in and around the area of Bastogne. From the next phase was moving to Camp Mackle in North Carolina, where we coordinated all of our activities. That took about 3 weeks. Determination of who does what, when, where, and why, and then we moved on to Camp Miles Standish in Boston and took a 10-day convoy trip across the Atlantic. Our gear, for the most part, as we were suited up for combat, was a ragtag combination of all kinds of equipment that, for the most part, would be death-dealing bric-a-brac. Some of it we threw away after we landed in Normandy, others we kept. I threw away my Mae West. She was too big and bulky. And she was yellow, so she always made a good marker for me, so I got rid of that. Unfortunately, I got rid of my musette bag, which had all the personal stuff that I needed. We were not allowed to take any instrumentation, such as pen and pencil, and take notes on anyone or anything was going on. No photography was allowed. A regimental colonel had his own photographer and followed him day by day. So there's a pretty good lead to what he was doing and when he was doing it. We trained in England. And before we got to England, I had the mumps on board ship on both sides of my jaws, and that was a painful deal, so I was put into a quarantine ward for the entire trip. When we got to Glasgow, Scotland, I took about 10 fellows to a hospital, and then 3 weeks later I moved on down to Lambourne, England, southwest of London, and we trained in 3 operations there. From those operations, we met with a number of exercises. I was sent to the British to kind of orient them as to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Also, I was appointed to take up chemical warfare activities and learn how to make booby traps and all kinds of innovative things. The colonel wanted us to be innovative, and so we did. One of the innovations was in Normandy that there were not many vehicles, and most was cart and horse-drawn activities with ammunition loaded on board the carts. And we were to scout those out and blow them up as best we could and as soon as we could. So in order to do that, the horses leave their poop, and we just dug holes and piled the mine into the holes and covered it with the same. And the driver would come along, and he would pay no attention to that being natural for happenings on the roadway, and he would strike the ammunition loaded mine, and up he would go. So we got a lot of them that way. We were 37 days in Normandy. I was wounded twice there with a sniper, and as I crossed the window, the bullet hit the concrete in front of me and bounced off of that, and then hit me in the left leg just above the knee. That knee was taking an awful beating in 3 or 4 years of war. Just wonder I still got it. From there we moved to the Merrifield Airport or Airdrome, and this was about June 1, and we put all of our activities together. There's a postage stamp that represents General Eisenhower and Lieutenant Strobel talking things over. General Eisenhower is asking the lieutenant what's going on and how is it going to, what you guys going to do, and what are your innovative, creative activities you're going to take place. So he explained those in good haste, and off he went. He visited many of the other airports, and in one of the airports, Lieutenant Hamilton received an individual that ran out of the hospital and was going to miss the invasion. He didn't have any equipment, let alone a weapon, and the fellows got together and got the weapon and other instrumentation that he needed and got him on board ship. He loaded the rifle and was pointing toward the bottom of the deck. As the aircraft just began to roll down the runway, he fired his weapon. It ricocheted around the cabin for a few seconds. Lieutenant Hamilton found out what it was and who had done it. He went over and picked him up by the harness and banged his head against the bulkhead, took him over to the door and threw him out. Later, after Normandy invasion was over and the 5 beachheads had been solidified and we were ready to move on, that is moving back to England again so that we can get Operation Market Garden in order. The flight from Merrifield to Normandy was in a form of V-of-V's. 45 aircraft, C-47s, about 100 feet apart, almost wingtip to wingtip, and staggered at maybe 50 feet, one above the other, in order that they observe what is going on in the lead plane. The lead aircraft had a blue dome, and when that blue dome light went on, then the jumping starts. But in order to do that, we had to assemble first 45 aircraft in a Section 14. I was in one of the right-hand V of V's, and took about 128 men in Company C to a rifle company to board on 9 aircraft. We rolled down the runway, and I saw General Eisenhower step forward away from his entourage of individuals and give us a broad salute and a smile and wave goodbye. And so off we went at 5,000 feet toward the English Channel, dropped down to 1,500 feet, and then from there to 500 feet to avoid the detection of radar by the Germans. We passed two submarines. The first one gave us a light signal that indicated we're on track, and we were to take about 35 to 40 minutes from that point on to reach our destination. As we got close to Jersey and Guernsey Island, we could have turned right or left. That was a real good technique. We turned left and went to the Cotton Peninsula. We passed the Jersey and Guernsey Islands, and just before we turned left, second submarine gave us a signal, and that was our left turn point. We touched Barnesville at the Cotton Peninsula, now at 750 feet. Our jump altitude was 750 feet. All the drainage pattern of the entire continent was toward the English Channel. The Douvre River and its tributaries were running in that direction. There was a set of locks at the Grand Bay area near and below Carentan, between Carentan and San Miguelis, that controlled most of the water flow. Those locks were closed, so the polders and pastures were flooded. Trees were cut by the Germans and pointed and put into the ground, and wire strung from one top of the tree to the other top of the tree, and then on a certain number of poles, the tether mine was placed. This was an anti-parachutist detection equipment, and also an anti-glider, so that they would come in and crash. They could not, photographic equipment did not reveal that this existed, except that the poles were there, but no wires were recognized. When we flew into that region, we were told to keep our legs crossed, or otherwise you'd get cut in half if you hit one of those wires. We took off at 10:21 English double summertime on June 5th. I was assigned as a gopher for Lieutenant Colonel Carroll, who was killed on the Normandy jump. I had to know what he was doing, where he was doing it, and why he was doing it to contact him immediately. So I was released after June 5th, and we went for dinner. We had anything we wanted, including ice cream. Sounds like the Last Supper. After dinner, Colonel Johnson stood on the hood of the Jeep covered with a camouflage parachute and gave us a knife speech. He was a knife-throwing character, and on a 4 by 8 foot piece of plywood, he had a pictograph of Tojo on the reverse side, one of Hitler. He standing about 50 feet and throw that Bowie knife at it, and in most cases it would stick. But one time he threw it and it bounced back and hit him. So here's the colonel standing on the hood of the Jeep, ready to give his knife speech and to encourage us on, and the encouraging elements were to tell us that we were supposed to do this, this, and this, and what are you here for? To kill Germans, of course. We didn't answer that, but we gave him 3 cheers, and he reached down to his calf of his leg to pull out his Bowie knife and hold it over his head, and gave us a hurrah. Newt Rockney final words, and the Bowie knife wouldn't come loose. Oh, he was totally embarrassed there, so he reached for his M1A1 knife on his belt and held it over his head and added a few illustrious words to it that would fill the air with sulfuric fumes. He wanted to shake hands with every one of us, and in so doing, we marched by him one by one, and in a religious attitude, he gave us a God speech, a goodwill God send-off speech, and off we went. We marched on to our aircraft that had been painted stripes had been painted on the wings and the body. They were about 2 feet wide and encircled the entire aircraft on the wings and the body. And that was done the night before, so it was really a difficult job. It was really designed for identification, which worked rather well. We assembled at our aircraft 18 parachutists, the pilot, co-pilot, and crew chief. And we practiced again making final touches on our bundles that are going to be strung underneath the aircraft. Each bundle weighed about 300 pounds and double-ended with a double-colored flashlight. Red meant ammunition or machine gun. So we had to learn what the color notation was. So 6 bundles slung under the aircraft, 1 bundle in the door. And as we took off, I mentioned before that General Eisenhower was on the field and he gave us a 3-cheer thing. We flew into Normandy about 58 minutes. The Pathfinders flew ahead of them at about 45 minutes. And they laid in some panels as they missed their drop zone. Every one of them missed their drop zone. A, B, and C drop zones were assigned to the 3 regiments of the 101st Airborne Division. This was a night jump. We jumped at I jumped at 1:41, June 6th.
God bless you.
I stood in the door. Every jump I made was a super. It went flawless, except the final one in the Normandy jump, which was a very key one at that moment, because a lot of things happened that shouldn't have happened, and things that we weren't even aware of that did take place and did happen. We flew up the panel of the Pathfinders after the pilots located them. We were supposed to jump on drop zone B, which was close to and in a flooded area. The pilots, I think, recognized that, and as I stood in the door with my hands on each side of the fuselage and the bundle in front of me, we had no self-sealing gas tanks, and we were going 165 miles an hour. We should have been doing 110 to 90. We can't jump at 165. The number 2 and 3 men right next to me and behind me were standing. We had already stood up and hooked up and closed up and had all the equipment checked. We were ready to go. The Lieutenant Jansen gave us the final word as he moved from number 18 after checking him, and the check went all the way up to me, and the Lieutenant Jansen and I pushed the bundle out, but before we did that, he wanted to know if everything was okay, so we gave him a hurrah, and everything is okay. Let's get the hell out of here. So we tightened up and pushed, and as I looked out the door, the earth seemed to break open in a crescendo of fire and fireworks and tracers coming up. We had no self-sealing gas tanks, so I was a little bit worried about that. I think we were being hit by machine gun bullets, and then I was afraid of being castrated. But that didn't work. We flew right up the panel of the instrumentation laid down by the Pathfinders. We crossed the T, and the green light goes on. The red light was out, and the white light was on. Was out. If we'd had all 3 lights on, we probably would have stood there frozen in intellect and not know what to do. But the green light was on, and so out we went. And we were fishtailing, squishing, falling, weaving, doing everything that we possibly could to stay afloat. And with 18 guys standing, it was pretty difficult. So some of them had to sit down because we were so bulky. I weighed 276 pounds. 137 was equipment and all kinds of death-dealing bric-a-brac that I was going to throw away that I didn't know it at that time. But I made a mistake of getting rid of some of my K-rations, which I needed later. But as the bundle went out, number 2 and 3 man pulled manual switches and electrical switches, and 6 bundles dropped away, and the bundle in the doorway was pushed out. And the plane went up, I believe, about 50 to 60 feet. So I was kind of glued to the floor. When it went up, I went down. I still was on my feet, and my knees were bent. And as I stepped out the door, the prop blast hit me, and my arms were close to my body. My left arm got caught in the lower left-hand corner of the door. So here I am hanging outside of the aircraft. The first half of the stick went by me. I was upside down when the Musette bag came up and hit me in the face. The reserve parachute was in the way. and as I swung out, I recognized some of the guys going by, and I wish I was with them, but not quite. As I came in and hit the side of the aircraft again, I turned just enough to get my arm loose, and I was scraped from armpit to wrist, and I had a $128 brand new Hamilton wristwatch. And in those days, that was a prime thing to carry. It was a good wristwatch like that, black face and gold plated. That one was torn off, and I think some good Frenchman probably got it. The jump altitude, I think, was I went out the door maybe 500 to 450 feet. The jump altitude was scheduled at 750 feet, but we were too fast, too low, and under fire. So as I left the door, I felt the opening of the parachute after I got loose, and the top of the parachute, called the apex vent collar, was not big enough to spill out the moist, pregnant air. So I started to oscillate. I took an oscillation to the right and one to the left, and it spilled out the air in that manner. And by about that time, after 2 or 3 oscillations, I was just touching the ground. With all the equipment I had, I bounced twice and laid on my back there, and I couldn't get at the quick release equipment. So number 2 and 3 man just came by and helped me out. I got rid of all that stuff. We crossed the canal and came to a decomposed granite road, and we heard the clickers. You understand the clickers that took place? It was made by Boston Shoe Company that made our jump boots, and it was a pretty good idea that each individual in the 101st had one of these clickers, and we'd click it, and we'd listen, click it, and listen, and work our way toward one another. And then at that point, we got close enough to hug each other and recognize our physical features. We knew their voices, we knew their physical stance, and one of them came up to me after I recognized about 5 or 6 of them. He said I got a hand grenade pulled, or rather the pin pulled on my hand grenade, and I can't get it in. Well, I told him, well, you probably don't have it anyway, or if you do, you probably threw it away and you couldn't get it back in your grenade anyway because the pin is bent. So I said, give it to me, and he did very carefully. I got everybody down, and I rolled over, took the hand grenade, rolled over on the road toward the canal and dropped it in, rolled back to the middle of the road, and it exploded, and war was on from there. Moved on to the road about 5 or 6 feet down, 50-some 6 feet down, and 500 to 100 yards off the highway. I saw a farmhouse, and I thought, well, we haven't gotten any Germans yet. We got more hand grenades than we have Germans. So after we'd found our bundles and gathered some of those things together after stealing or borrowing wheelbarrows from the French and pulled them out of trees and wherever we could find them. So I told Floyd Martin, the guy right next to me, to knock on the Frenchman's door and see what we could find out. And turn the rest of the guys to the back in case there were Germans there. In about 35 or 40 seconds, the Frenchman came out, and he was dressed in a long white nightgown from shoulder to floor. He had a white tassel cap with a little small cotton ball on the end of it, and he had a dish in his hand with a lighted candle. And I looked at him and I started to laugh. And in so doing, I suddenly recognized I'm in trouble. Because my mind was then taken away from the activities I was in, and I was seeing something that was quite normal in a city life. So that's a danger point, and you can't let that happen. It happened 2 other times before me, but they both turned out to be life-saving activities. So we pushed him aside and went into the house and laid a map on the floor and pointed 360 degrees with a question, where is it? And the word was Carenton, was a key word. So he finally pointed out, Carenton is in this direction. In the meantime, his wife came out dressed the same way. And we assured him that no harm is going to come, and he excused himself and went and picked up 8 rounds of ammunition, gave us 6, and he kept 2. And we moved on toward a polder that was not flooded, where Major Allen was gathering together us little chickens and us little Geronimos, and from that point we marched on toward Hill's Corner. And at Hill's Corner, the Germans were coming down from Cherbourg on N13, and were just about ready to enter Father Sampson's first aid station. We recognized that as a dire possibility, and Lieutenant Parker had jumped with us from the United States Navy. He had contact with the United States cruiser Quincy. So he called Quincy and made identification by way of baseball questions with a gunnery officer, and he asked for 3 rounds to stop the Germans from invading the first aid station and on coming in behind us. The first round was long, second round was short, and the third round was right on, and we worried whether Father Sampson was going to make it or not. He did and was captured later. From there we moved to Hill's Corner, which is about a quarter mile from La Barquette Locks, and at that point I could hear the shells coming in. I'm not sure of the size of those shells, but they sure did whistle. And from the whistling, Lieutenant Parker told me that everything is okay. We're not going to get hit. The ones you hear do not hit you. The ones you don't hear are when we're going to be a little bit too close. So 3 of us were sent over to La Barquette Locks, and we decided to outpost it. We didn't. I told everybody that we're not going in the house. It's probably empty anyway. We're going to stay outside because if the Germans came through at any one time here, they might set it on fire, and then we're in trouble. We set up a 3-man foxhole about 10 yards apart, and tied our wrists together with suspension line from the parachutes, and absolutely no talking at all during the darkness. The lock faced the farmhouse, and on the opposite side of the farmhouse was the 2 tributaries, a Jordan River and a Madeleine River. So there was a passageway between those, the Doubs River in the farmhouse and the Madeleine River. The Germans could come through. So we set up a trap there, and I put in about 6 stakes, and found wire and ran wire from one stake to the other, and then strung tin cans hung from wires and put bolts and nuts in them. so that if anyone coming through, they wouldn't see all of that activity, because dark is dark in Normandy. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, we heard the rattle. And I told the fellas, if you hear any rattling, just jerk and wake up everybody, one person on to be awake at all times, so we'll just start shooting. We start shooting at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we caught one German. I don't know whether he was a deserter or whether he was a scout or he was leading a patrol. But he was out there about 50 yards from us, and he moaned and groaned all night. So George Zeborowski couldn't stand it anymore. He had some mortuary experience, went out with his N1 knife and finished him off, and then we pulled him in the morning and dug a grave under an apple tree, and I cut branches off and made a Christian cross and took his jump wings. I still had them in the book I wrote, Trial by Combat. And send the... They're informing I'm talking too much. So much for that battle at La Barquette. I was wounded 4 times, had 195 days of combat, 2 combat jumps, and 4 campaigns. So that was plenty for me. They finally took me out of activity in Bastogne. So I salute you again for coming and listening to me.
Tom will be available to take your questions, and we're going to show you a short video right now. If you could sit just a moment before we have our intermission. We're doing a short video, and the reason we're doing this, again, we've been here since 1932. We've just created a 501c3 foundation to do, as Chris said, Operation Phoenix, which is the remodel of our post. We do so much in the community for our veterans.
I'm the 65th Commander of the American Legion here in Encinitas, and we're here for the 3rd annual Army-Navy fundraiser to save our Legion. In San Diego, we have 250,000 veterans, and in our Legion, we have approximately 432 veterans, 22 World War II veterans that are still alive and that are here today. Some of them are here today. We have 48 Korean War veterans that are still alive. But we need your help. We're doing this so that we can save our Legion for our World War II veterans, our Korean War veterans, and for those that have gone before us. What we want to do is we want to take this old World War II barracks, or World War I barracks, I'm sorry, and we want to remodel it and then turn it into a Veterans Resource Center with a veteran service officer here working full-time to work for our veterans, young and old.
Thank you. We've got an announcement, and then our adjutant's going to come up here and talk a little bit about Hank Garrett. And then we're going to get the party started. Yeah! So right now I want to introduce Scott Marquis. He's our adjutant, and he's going to introduce Hank Garrett.
Is this thing on? Oh, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please, come on in. You're not going to want to miss this. My name is Scott Marquette. I'm the adjutant here at Post 416. Proudly served the United States Army 10 years. Unfortunately, 5 reconstructive knee surgeries took me out of the game. I've been disconnected from the military for about 16 years when an opportunity came up to learn about the American Legion. Came down here to Post 416 in Encinitas, and I walked in the door. Bright, smiling face over there, Steve Lewandowski jumped up from a table and said, "Hey, brother, welcome to Post 416. I walked in the door, I felt like I was at home. It's a wonderful opportunity to spend the time and get to know all you veterans and the family members of the veterans, so thank you guys for coming down today. I've been the opportunity to go up to Los Angeles and meet different people over the years, but it's the first time I had ever met an actor, a gentleman who is out there for the public, who takes his donations and gives them back to the veterans. That really affected my heart. I sat down, took a moment, and talked with him. And he said, "Hey, you know, I'd like to get a chance to come down and meet the people here at Post 416 for the 100th year anniversary of the Legion." Some of you may be familiar with Mr. Garrett and his accomplishments. You've seen him in various films such as 3 Days of the Condor, fighting Robert Redford. The only reason Redford won because he pulled a pistol on him. You've seen him in Serpico, teaching Al Pacino the right way to interrogate a suspect. And he's also in the Karate Hall of Fame, the Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's a man of many talents, multifaceted, actor and comedian. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Hank Garrett.
Hello, my name is Hank, and I'm an alcoholic. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm at the wrong meeting. I had a bit of a situation coming out here. If I could get your attention, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm just as hungry as you are. I'm an actor. Coming out here, we were involved in a minor traffic situation. We were guilty of making an O-turn. That's when you make a U-turn and change your mind. I was stopped by a local police officer, and I said to my manager, let me handle this. The police officer, I looked at him and I said, you obviously do not know who I am. You continue to harass us. One phone call from me, I will have both you and your commanding officer walking a beat in the desert. The look on his face as he leaned over and said, sir, would you mind lowering your window? I can't hear a word you're saying. I'm originally from New York. And I got to tell you something, I miss New York. I miss New York because there was a sense of family and warmth that I never found anywhere else in the world. Any given morning, my grandmother, my grandfather would get up. Then my mother and father would get up. And my Uncle Charlie and my Aunt Rose would get up. Then my cousin Seymour, my cousin Ruth would get up. My brother Murray, my brother Saul would get up. And before you knew it, I had that whole bed to myself. I never slept alone till I got married. I see you've been there. In fact, I, not too long ago, went through a horrible divorce. And they asked me, do you feel any animosity to your ex-wife? I said, no, I worship the ground that's coming to her. You know, they say there are signals on a wedding night. I should have known. When I looked at her and said, sweetheart, tell me the truth. Am I your first man? And she said, why does every guy ask me the same damn question? I want to tell you that I was in Vietnam. I was frontline entertainment in Nam. I was a civilian that I had volunteered to go frontline. And I remember the first day I hit the front line, the machine gun opened up and I yelled, critics! I got up a little early, or rather late, and I was heading toward the front line. And a young GI came up to me and said, Mr. Garrett, where are you going? I said, I'm heading out to entertain the troops. He said, which side? He said, you're heading right to the enemy. Not too long ago, I went to see the traveling wall that had the names of all the kids that we lost in Nam. And while I was there, a gentleman came up to me and said, Mr. Garrett, I remember you from Vietnam. You brought us laughter when there was nothing to laugh about. That meant more to me than any role I've ever played or any award I've ever had. I salute you from the very core of my being. I love each and every one of you for all that you have contributed to making me and my family safe, and what you have done to make the world safe. I can't thank you enough. I am considered a grand master of martial arts. In my little world of combat, I kept picturing what these kids are out doing with their lives to save us. We can't thank God enough for all these wonderful, incredible, brave young men.
Amen.
In my little way, what I do is I raise funds for wounded warriors and disabled American veterans. I have a booth back inside. I sell autographed pictures of all the different movies and television shows that I've done. And all the proceeds go to the wounded warriors and disabled American veterans. And to date, we've raised approximately $60,000. I still go to the hospitals, and now we have something else that we're doing. We're going to the children's prisons. I mean children. Kids from 11 to 17 that are incarcerated. I was one of those kids growing up in the streets of Harlem. And all I do is talk to them about the fact that God sent me an angel that got me off the street. That angel was Sammy Davis Jr. Changed my life, got me into show business. And there is an angel for every one of these kids, as there's an angel for every one of us. Every day in Vietnam, I thank God. And God is good. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hank Garrett. Again, we really want to thank everyone for being here today. Hank is in the back by the stage, near the bar. You can't miss him. He might not be at the bar, but he'll be sitting by the bar. Make an opportunity for a Hollywood legend. Been in the film industry since 1962. Really appreciate the opportunity for he and his wife to come down and talk. Thank you everyone for being here. We're going to take a quick intermission, get things set up, change the stage out, 10-15 minutes. We'll have the band up and running and get the music started. For now, hit the bathroom and have a good time.